Today's podcast is brought to you by Funny Bone Broth, now available at Italy and McEwen's in the TD Center. Or you can visit them at funnybonebroth.com.
In a world where it seems totally normal to listen to a podcast about the Toronto Argonauts, it's the X's and Argos podcast.
Welcome to the X's and Argos podcast. My name is Ben Grant, joined again today by JB, and this is going to be our Argos Draft Analysis podcast, where we have a chance to kind of talk together for the first time about things that we saw in the draft, things that we liked, things that we didn't like, maybe the other road we could have gone down with certain picks. So I'm pretty excited. I think it helps that I was excited about how the draft went. It wasn't exactly the way that I foresaw it going, but I was pretty pleased with what the Argos did with the draft, and I think that makes a draft analysis more fun. What were your overall impressions?
Yeah, I agree. I thought it was good. I thought that really there was only one pick I disagreed with, and I really liked that they seemed to have a clear philosophy. I liked that they didn't have a lot of off the table choices, and I think we added a lot of plug and play players, which I think is definitely something they were looking to do. I think they were looking to pick people who, the Argos are not the Eskimos or Winnipeg, or a team that really can have the luxury of having a player grow into a position. I think they were looking for guys who were going to be able to play immediately. And so in that way, that changes the lens that they're looking at players through.
Yeah, I agree. And I think they did a pretty good job with that. So why don't we go through each of the Argos picks, and we can kind of talk about each selection as we go, and maybe some of the other directions we could have gone. But and maybe we can both assign a grade to each pick. I've already put mine on xsandargos.com, but I don't know what you think about each of the players, so we can take a look at that. At the end, we can maybe give an overall grade, which I have not done yet. All right, so we open round one. Were you surprised to see BC trade into that one spot?
I was surprised at how cheap it was.
Yeah.
I mean, I think we talked about it, like you and I were texting about it. I mean, they really almost nothing. I thought for sure you'd have to give up a future one to jump up. So that definitely surprised me that it was that affordable to get into one.
And I was hoping initially that Jordan Williams would fall. Now that would have changed the entire complexion of the draft for me, because Williams was my number one target. But I also wanted Cassar later on. Now, if we'd had Williams, then suddenly Cassar isn't a player you're looking at in round two. And then, the ripple effect on down the line continues. So that first pick, that trade by BC, because I don't think Calgary was going to take Williams. I think they had their eye on Adiemi Berglund, pretty much from the get-go, and they knew that they could still get him later on in the first round. So that would have been interesting. That would have changed the draft entirely.
Well, so it was such a luxury for Calgary. That's what good franchises do. They took the pick. They didn't need the pick. The guy they needed because of their roster talent, they could get at 3. It's just really smart asset management by probably the best franchise in the league.
And I guess there weren't a lot of trading partner options because, as you said, BC didn't have to pay a lot. So there obviously wasn't a big bidding war going on.
Yeah, I wonder. I mean, it suggests to me that Toronto was not interested in moving up.
No, I don't think they were at all. I think this was their guy from the get-go. They knew that Calgary... Well, actually, I don't know if they knew for sure Calgary wasn't going to take Brissett, but I think they thought it was probably unlikely. I'm sure it made them feel better when it was BC that moved into that spot, because BC is not a team looking at it. They've got a lot of other needs. Receiver wasn't really one of them. So that probably put their mind at ease when they were, maybe nervous about Calgary taking Brissett.
Maybe Calgary and Toronto. I don't know what Toronto and Calgary's relationship is currently.
Yeah, and that's interesting too, because obviously with Dinwiddie, he has a lot of ties with the Calgary organization. Maybe he did have a bit of thought as to what direction they were going to go. That's interesting. So number 2 pick comes. We take Dejan Brissett. Initial thoughts?
I wanted an offensive lineman because, I think that's the football choice, right? If you don't have an offensive line, you don't have anything. So, that's, anybody in football will tell you that. But you know what? I've come around to pinball thinking, and I really love the pick.
Yeah, I do too. And like you say, I was thinking Carter O'Donnell at that stage, but obviously the league thinks far more than I do that he's going to stick in the NFL because he wasn't drafted until much later, into the 20s. And he was a guy that I thought was going to be taken in the first round because I don't think the odds of him staying in the NFL are as high as they obviously think. So yeah, no one was going to go in that direction. It wasn't just Toronto saying, no, we're not interested in that lineman. And for me, I agree. If you're not going to take O'Donnell, then because he was the next best player I had up on the board, then you do take the number one difference maker. And for me, that was Dejan Brissett because he's a ratio changer. That term has been thrown around a lot with the Argos this offseason. And you've just added another Canadian receiver that is going to start. So we've now got 3 and possibly 4.
I'm really excited for a chance to have a Canadian star that the team is desperately needing a star. And, if this kid, the Raptor connection obviously is awesome, but he's a local guy. And, if he can get some chemistry, I think that's a slam dunk pick.
It's hard for me to tell what his ceiling is because we haven't really seen him play football in 2 years. Like he did play at Virginia last year, but not very much. He didn't get that many snaps. It didn't really have any production. And then the year before, he really didn't play at all. And so you're kind of looking at his film, and it's from a few years ago. It looks great, but we still got to see what he looks like here. I don't know. I don't know if his ceiling is high or higher than Breskison. That'll be interesting to see. But either way, I'm confident that between Breskison, Ajay, and Brissett, we've got 3 good, solid Canadians who can start as receivers. And like I said before, if we can add TJ, then this is it's nuts. The ratio. We're going to end up starting 10 or 11 Canadians based on the roster we've got right now. I give that pick an A grade. I don't have as an A plus, but it is an A in my book. What do you give for this pick of Dejan Brissett?
I would give that pick an A minus.
A minus. Like what would have been an A plus for you?
I think it's. I don't know that an A plus pick exists.
Well, that's like you can't have like someone's writing a test saying, "Well, how come I can't get 100%?" Well, that doesn't exist on this test.
Well, that's not, I don't think that's a direct analogy. I think that.
See, I think an A plus on this is you trade down 2 spots and still take Brissett. That's your A plus. But I think this is an A. I think that's a great pick. So second pick in the first round came up, and I did feel like we were definitely going to take an offensive lineman here, and I was excited because we still had Carter O'Donnell on the board, and I thought, well, here is the Carter O'Donnell pick at 9, and they took Theron Churchill, which really surprised me because if they weren't going to go O'Donnell, there were a few other guys I would have expected to go before that. And so that surprised me a little bit. But in now having sat back, watched a bit more film on Churchill and read a little bit more about him, I'm actually really excited about this. So this is another case of it not going the way that I necessarily thought it should on draft night, but upon reflection, I think that it seems like a pretty sound pick. Now that being said, I still have some concerns, and I'll go through those. But at the end of the day, who are we to say to to say to Vince too, like director of Canadian scouting, to say, look, I know you played offensive line, you have been a scout for years now, but JB and I have some thoughts on who you should have drafted in the O line. So obviously he knows a lot better than we do, and if he thinks that that's his O lineman, then that's the guy you've got to draft.
Well, I'm not willing just to turn in my pundit license.
No, that's fair, and I'll still state some of my concerns with Churchill, but having watched his film, I'm a bit more carefully since we selected him. I'm not sure he doesn't belong there. So again, I'll give the edge to the Argos execs and staff and coaching staff, and say, you know what, they obviously really like this guy. He was their guy. This was their O lineman to take.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting pick in a couple of ways. I mean, I think that it's the first off the board pick. Now, if you're a new organization, a new group, my kind of spidey sense is not happy with off the board picks. I don't have any context yet to trust them. So, in terms of giving them the benefit of the doubt. So that sort of was an initial red flag, that this is a new group. But there was not an O-lineman taken in the second round. So that's interesting in terms of if they were going to go O-line there. I guess you're really simply looking, if not him, then you were looking at O'Donnell. And who knows what conversations people have had with O'Donnell. Maybe he was not receptive. It's really hard to know what was going on behind the scenes. If I were to guess, I think that the Argos chose a guy who's plug and play, and that they are not looking to play the waiting game, and they don't have the luxury of doing that, where a team a little deeper, I think that's a smarter pick for the Argos. I mean, he's going to play.
He will. He looks really solid. The big strike I had against him, like I had him ranked 41 on my board.
Yeah, that was pretty consistent across a lot of boards.
Yeah, I don't think I was way out there, but the reason for my ranking wasn't his skill. When you watch him play, he looks every bit as good as the rest of the offensive linemen that were taken early. The difference is he's turning 26 this year.
Right.
And that matters to me because, as we've seen, like the evidence is out there to suggest that there is a big jump that players take either at 22, 23 years old, but they don't take that jump again. Like, this is what you've got in almost all players. There are some exceptions, like in the article that I wrote on xsandArgos.com, I pointed out like Alain Pay that Edmonton drafted, who's 26, but that's a little different because he's only played 1 year of football. So obviously he is going to see a jump. We saw that with some of the Raptors, like guys like Pascal Siakam. Like, obviously his jump came a bit later than most people because he started playing basketball later. And so, this is something that's not the case with Churchill. He's been playing football for a really long time, and he is what he's going to be.
Yeah, it's really more. It's almost like a free agent signing.
Yeah, that's kind of what it is. I agree, and I like what I see on film. Like I said, he's a great run blocker, really good pass blocker. A couple little things that I'll talk about more specifically. I'm going to do a film breakdown early next week, and I'll talk a bit more specifically about some of the things from his game that I like and don't like. But essentially, yeah, he's ready to go, but they have to know there's not going to be a massive jump for him over the next couple of years. That jump has happened. It happened when he got to Regina because he was a first year starter. That was the year of his big jump where, physically he improved and suddenly he was a starting freshman. Obviously they have a lot of faith in Campbell, who they re-signed this year. Richards, I really like. Cage, we haven't really had a chance to see too much yet. But there's a possibility here with us not coming away with a center that maybe they are going to ask Bladek to play center if it doesn't pan out with Ty Allen. I know I keep talking about Starchala too. I don't know, what that center spot looks like, but I think they're hoping Allen works out. Bladek and Blake can stay at guard, and now you've got Churchill, who can be next man up if you've got either Richards or Campbell starting at right tackle and Cage starting at left tackle. And if he beats someone out, great. And if he doesn't, then he can kind of learn to play the guard spot while the season goes on, and fill in a tackle if need be. Which I think is a pretty good plan.
Well, I think if you look at their first 3 picks, those are all tough men. I think that that's great. I think that they were looking to pick a personality, and that comes through clearly in those 3 picks.
It comes through in the rest of them too. It doesn't just stop there. A room of people you don't want to fight.
I mean, it's great. It's great. Those rooms are terrific, but are harder to handle. That might be a conversation for another day about running that room. But that's what they're building. So it's not as easy to build a bully as everybody thinks.
So grade on Theron Churchill.
Again, I think my initial grade was a C. Because it was seemingly an overdraft, and I thought O'Donnell was a fantastic value pick at 10 there. But I can move up to a B. I think that he is plug and play, and certainly there's room for that on our offensive line. And I'm just going to, like you did, give them the benefit of the doubt that they have their reasons for why they think O'Donnell is more of a long shot than they wanted for at least a year.
And I went with a B-, basically the same reasons that you mentioned. I feel like if he was their guy, I feel like they could have got him later.
Well, like we said during the draft, is that if hey man, if he's your guy, go get him. No need to be coy.
Yep, I agree.
If he's your guy, you don't need to game it. If you like him and you want him, go get him, and we'll see.
Yep, no, agreed. So we moved to round 2, pick 11. The Argos take our man Jack Cassar, which I was really excited about. Like, we talked on the last podcast how we both had a chance to coach him. We know his family, and it's it was really exciting for me to know that, because I just knowing all the people around him that would have been so excited that he's staying close to home. And I thought that was really cool. Now, the other side of it is just knowing what kind of a player he is. And that was exciting in a whole different way, thinking, yeah, the Argos are getting Jack Cassar. And I know what kind of a difference that's going to mean for the defense and for special teams.
I mean, I don't think it's by accident. I think pinball is as savvy at the showbiz part of sports as anybody, in terms of going local, and having local kids come and play for the team. And I think that's great. I hate when franchise. I mean, the Jays did that just to jump sports. The Blue Jays used to do that all the time. The Blue Jays used to seemingly willfully not pick Canadian players in some sort of show of anti-pandering. And I just thought it was idiotic. I just don't think you can, it's okay to understand that if you pick a kid who's Canadian and is also good, that's great for your franchise.
Mm-hmm.
You don't need to act like you're above that. And I think picking the local kid is a win-win. And I think it was great that they weren't, have their ego and like, well, we're not picking the local kid, we're picking the kid who's the best. And I think it factored in. I do think it factored in, and it's a great pick. I think if their coordinator uses him correctly, he is absolutely a weapon.
Oh yeah, no, he's a monster.
Right. I mean, I think he's fantastic. I think people are going to be really surprised. I really hope the defensive coordinator is in love with the pick and wants to scheme it up for him, because he's going to be a special teams ace.
It's exciting to watch him play middle linebacker, but it's really exciting to watch him on specials, especially kick coverage, kickoff coverage team. There's so much good film on Jack, not just going in and making tackles, but obliterating the guy assigned to block him, obliterating the guy that was supposed to help him, and then turning the ball carrier upside down, which he does in multiple games. It's unreal.
As you well know, Jack, before they changed the rules, Jack certainly enjoyed blindside blocking on returns.
He was very good at it. But those rules have changed.
But now he's in a league where things are a little different. So
he's adjusted though. Like, he's not a guy that gets a lot of penalties. He crushes people, but he does it within the rules. And he knows what he can and can't do.
And I think his ceiling, we talked about how maybe Churchill is there, but I mean, I think Jack's ceiling is still really far away.
Oh yeah, well, he's still a few years younger. I don't think he's gone through that big jump yet. And I think it's a perfect situation, as long as it plays correctly, is having Bear Woods in that linebacker room. What a great middle linebacker to learn from for Kassar. If Woods is willing to be a mentor, and if Kassar is willing to learn from him, then that is a really nice pairing.
Yeah, I mean, that's always a tricky situation in any professional sport. But that's the nature of it. Everybody knows, you're picked to be replaced. So yeah, I hope so too. I think
Woods is the right guy for that. Like, he's such a great locker room leader, and he's a guy that thought he was out of football a year ago anyway. He had no interest from any team. Seemingly wasn't going to play anymore, and so
he's in the right stage of his career to be.
He knows where he is, and he knows what he is, and to see a guy like this come in, I think is got to be really exciting for him, because probably reminds him of a young Bear Woods.
I mean, I'm highly biased, but yeah, I mean, I gave that pick an A+. I mean, it was the guy we wanted. We mocked them there. I was worried Ottawa was going to take him, but the D lineman they got was a good pick. I think it drops off after Jack in the draft.
I had Jack as the number 4 overall pick, and so I thought that was huge value in round 2. So yeah, it was an A+ for me.
Yeah, great pick.
A+ for you, great pick. So we move on to the end of the second round. We've now got our territorial pick. So I thought for sure here they were going to take Jonathan Zamora from St. FX, the center, because like I've said, I'm not sure how comfortable they are with the center situation. But what this pick tells me, the fact that they didn't take Zamora and he ends up getting taken in the next round by Calgary, they obviously feel like Ty Allen is going to be a good center. They obviously think that they can, they obviously have faith in him. And if not him, they feel comfortable enough with Bladek or Starchala, whatever it is, they're not nervous about the center position. I was, but I don't have the insight to be able to know, what it looks like from their perspective, to be able to see what it's like at practice, to see workouts and other things that they've gone through. They're not nervous about center, so I am no longer nervous about center.
Maybe they thought, like we were talking with Churchill, I mean, because they almost did get to Zamora, right? He went 26, they picked at 28. Mm-hmm. Maybe they rolled the dice, but I agree with you in that they probably did not see it as an absolute emergency, and therefore, rolled the dice, because they did go O-line at 28. Maybe they go Zamora at 28.
I don't think so. And the reason I say that is because if they were at all nervous about the center situation, they could have taken Andrew Becker a bit later. There were other centers that they could have gone after that are good players, and they didn't. And that tells me they weren't even thinking about a center in this draft. It wasn't at all on their board, which makes me feel great. Awesome. Because again, they know. And the fact that they didn't go center with a territorial pick, they went with Sam Champong from Laurier, and by way of Cardinal Ambrozic. And that's he's another guy
Peel.
that we liked. Yeah, another Peel region player, And actually, in general, like Mississauga Brampton got a ton of love in this draft with some terrific players. But yeah, we talked about Sam on our last podcast, and we had hoped that the Argos would take him because we both know what kind of a player he is, what kind of kid he is, and yeah, that was a huge pick for me, and I think really good value too, because a lot of people had him going higher than 20, and the fact that he was still there, we used the territorial pick, awesome.
Yeah, I thought it fell in nice. I think your first 3 picks, I think, are largely guys who are good to go. And I think that then leaves you with, being able to do more of a lottery ticket. And with the territorial draft pick, which is kind of like found money, if you have found money, go buy something nice. Don't pay the electric bill. So
yeah, he is that. Like his ceiling is, his potential is through the roof. He could be amazing. And like we said before, they're in a nice situation on the defensive line where he doesn't have to come in. He can spend the entire year playing special teams, learning the position, getting better.
I think he's going to be a special teams killer. I mean, special teams is totally built for big, fast, strong kids.
So this is an A grade from me. I thought that was terrific. And the only reason I didn't grade it an A plus is I think I would have graded Zamora an A plus because I don't know for sure about what they were thinking in terms of centers. I couldn't go A plus just in case it actually is a need and they thought he would be there later and he wasn't. I don't know if I can give them the benefit of the doubt there. So I'll give it an A, which again, it's a great grade. Player I'm really happy with, a player that I projected to them last week, and here he is. Awesome.
Yeah, I agree. I think in an A minus, B plus is good there for me. Could they have flipped it? Could they have picked Zamora? Would he have been there at 28? I think you could argue he would have been there at 28.
At Champong?
Yeah.
Oh, I don't think so.
I think teams look at it. I mean, in my opinion, I think teams look at it as, I guess it just depends on your comfort level with ceiling. Maybe mid 3 he goes. Yeah, maybe. I wouldn't say for sure. Because I do think, I think most people see he is raw. So I think it is a question of how comfortable people are with drafting.
But I think teams are. Like you look at like 6 picks earlier, the Eskimos took Alain Pay that we talked about earlier. He's a guy that's played like 1 year of football. And he got drafted 14 overall. So, or 15, I think. No, he was 13 to Edmonton. I don't think he makes it to 28. And so, yeah, I wondered in the back of my mind if they thought Zamora might, but I'm going to, again, the fact that they didn't draft a center later in the draft means to me that no, they were never thinking about Zamora.
No, it's good. It's great. Honestly, I'm so happy. I know it sounds, like we're the local in-stadium talent cheering on the team, but look, honestly, I'm really happy with the picks.
We're critical when it's warranted. We will criticize if we think something was done poorly. We'll criticize play if we don't think it was there. That you listen to some of our podcasts from post game last year or right into the start of the off season. We're very critical when we think things are going poorly, but yeah, we do sound a bit like a cheerleading squad here, but it's because we approve of what's going on. We like the picks that they've made. So great. I hope we're cheerleaders for the next 10 years.
I wonder, did Pinball think about wide receiver at that pick?
I was hoping for Kean Schaefer-Baker.
I wonder if they thought about that in that territorial pick.
That was what I was pulling for, because he was someone that I had, we talked about him extensively in the last podcast, but I had him ranked a lot higher than most people did. And I was really wondering if it wasn't going to be Zamora, if it was going to be Kean Schaefer-Baker, and they surprised me by a Champong. But again, 3 guys that we talked about in the last podcast. And And then I wondered again at 28 if they might take Schaefer Baker, because imagine that for a second. Because Schaefer Baker, I project as being a starter in the CFL, and potentially having 5 wideouts that are Canadians who can start.
To me, I think the fact they didn't pick him, maybe I'm reading too much into it, but to me it suggests they believe that this stuff is going to get worked out.
I think it will. Like I don't see how
I think it will
can't.
too. It has to, right?
We're talking about the TJ Jones situation. Yeah, it will get worked out at some point. And I think, like you, I feel like the fact that they didn't take a shot at Schaefer Baker, because they know what kind of kid he is. Like, Pinball is, he lives in Mississauga, and he sees this football being played. He knows who Kean Schaefer Baker is full well. He's known about him for a long time. And so the fact that he didn't take him means to me that they do feel like the TJ Jones thing is going to work out, and that just wasn't a need anymore after Brissett was taken.
And it wouldn't be fair to him. I wouldn't want him to be buried. I think, so I'm happy that they didn't draft him, because, as much as I love drafting to a strength, I don't want to see him buried, on a depth chart.
I also don't want to see him catching touchdowns when Saskatchewan comes into town every time either. But
I agree. But I mean, where was he going to be?
In truth, he'd probably end up behind Breskison.
I'm happy for him that he went to Saskatchewan. He didn't go to Hamilton.
Yeah, that's always nice. I was very happy in that no one I wanted the Argos to draft was drafted by Hamilton.
Yeah, no, so it's good.
So, so we'll move on from round 2 to round 3, and we picked last in round 3 because of that Winnipeg trade. We ended up taking Dylan Giffen, offensive lineman out of Western. This pick I've gone all over the place on as well. Very much like what we talked about earlier with Theron Churchill. This was a pick that I didn't like initially, because in the lead up to the draft, I had Giffen ranked a lot lower than most people. Some people had Giffen going. Actually, a lot of people had Giffen going in the second round. He's massive. He's got to be the biggest player in the draft, and he's played for a really good Western team. He's been very well coached,
coming from an elite program.
It made sense. I have turned on my initial reaction. I've changed my initial reaction based on something that Mike Hogan mentioned to me on Twitter after the draft. I was expressing some concerns about Giffen's size, and he replied that Giffen is actually down to 320 pounds now, which means he's lost about 30, potentially 40 pounds since the end of Western season. And to me, that is really exciting, because my criticisms all came from his speed. He was too slow. When you watch his film, he's fast enough for the OUA, but only just. And if you end up in the CFL with someone lining up as like a wide 9 or just even your standard speed rusher, I didn't think Giffen was going to be fast enough, and he can only play tackle. At 6'8", he was only going to be a tackle. And so for me, I thought, well, no way, this guy's too slow. He's not going to be able to do it. Everything else was great. I loved his technique. I loved everything he did. He's hugely strong, but I just thought, no, he's going to be too slow. He'll never get a chance. And so when Hoagie said, no, he's 320 pounds, one, that told me I like the character of a guy who is going to dedicate himself, especially a big guy, to losing 30 or 40 pounds in order to make it, to get drafted. To me, that shows a level of commitment that I'm very impressed by. And I think it'll be interesting to see how much more mobile he is at this weight. And I think he's probably going to be a lot faster. I think any one of us would be a lot faster if we're losing 30 or 40 pounds. So, hopefully that is enough to pick up his speed. And suddenly you've got this monster of an offensive lineman that you've picked up at the end of the third round, which is amazing value.
Yeah, I don't think that you and I have the level of commitment that he has.
I do not.
I mean, I do lean towards I like when they take, same for the NFL. I like when players are taken from elite programs. I don't think it's everything, but I think the level of competition in those programs is very high. They are bringing in new players every year. I think that the level of coaching, I don't want to offend anybody. I'm not saying smaller schools aren't good, but that these top programs, especially like the Laval and so forth too, these are schools where the bar is really high. So to me, that's a check mark for him, that they saw in him a body that they liked, and that he was a productive starter for them.
Mm.
I
I
think
have to
that's
agree.
they're a great team.
Well, like you're saying, like the recruiting classes at Western, like, but they'll bring in like every year they'll bring in a guy that you think is, wow, that guy's an amazing quarterback and he's going to Western, and then they bring in like 6 other amazing quarterbacks that are also going to Western. It's like a football factory.
What did you think about the McMaster kid?
I had Zod ranked pretty high. Like I had him at 25, which is mid third round. So in terms of value, I would have been happy with that pick. I thought there were, again, like I said before, there are a few other directions I would have gone, but again, now knowing what I know, I'm far more excited about the pick than I was initially.
Well, if they looked at the third round as lottery ticket time, I mean, he's a lottery ticket. I mean, if you can get a 6'8" guy to be able to play, I mean, that's an absolute score. If you can have them on the field, if he can stay on the field, that's an absolute asset to your program. And so maybe, third round, take 2 swings. I think they did. I think they took 2 big swings with both these guys that I don't think Giffen is plug and play. I think he's a guy they look at as being 6'8", and if we can coach him up and if we can get him there, you can't coach size.
Yeah, and he certainly got enough of that. So I gave the pick a B as a grade.
Yeah, me too. I mean, I don't tend to badmouth 6'8" men.
No,
as a rule.
I wouldn't think it'd be a good policy to badmouth anybody that we drafted based on the collection of characters we got here. So we didn't have a pick in the 4th round, and then in the 5th round we took Dion Pellerin, running back from Waterloo. This is a pick that I like quite a lot. I actually thought he was a really interesting prospect. We're not looking at him as a pure running back. Like, this isn't someone that either myself or the Argos, I'm sure, we're looking at as, well, this is someone that's going to come in and compete to be the every down ball carrier. This is somebody that is going to challenge Declan Cross in his role, sort of as a fullback, H-back, tight end hybrid player. And he's also going to be a contributor immediately on special teams. And so I thought that was a great pick. It's 5th round.
First running back off the board.
Is he really the first running back off the board?
Yeah. So I assume they had him at 1. So I think if you're in 5 and you can pick the first guy on a depth chart, the Argos are lucky. Our kicker situation, 2 kickers went just before him. Our kicker situation is pretty good right now.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I mean, I think he clearly was their number 1 running back. I mean, I think if you can pick your number 1 guy in a category in the 5th round, that's a win.
He's a huge back, 6 feet, 225, and he runs straight forward with a vengeance. He runs like a rhinoceros. He just plows people over. There's some great film on him. It looks like, I mentioned this in the article I wrote, like it looks like it's like one of those practices, where the center comes to you and says, "Hey coach, can I carry the ball a couple times?" And it looks like they said, "Yes, you can." And that's Pellerin. He looks like a lineman that they gave the ball to. He's really big.
I mean, I'm all for youth at the running back position with their current depth chart.
Well, he's not going to be that kind of ball carrier, but he will compete with Cross for that sort of like fullback role. Like I said, because he's the same kind of player as Cross. His hands aren't quite as good as Cross. Like they would throw to him at Waterloo, but really just screens and leaks. But they, it's not like they were, throwing posts and corners to him. But yeah, his hands are capable enough, and otherwise he can do most of the things that Cross can do. So I think it's a little bit of depth there for that position. And he's another great locker room guy, really good kid who is a team player. He actually played, one of my favorite stories about him is that in grade 11, he was slated to be the running back for his senior high school team. And, was a terrific running back in junior football, was coming up. They had a couple of the running backs, but he was going to be the guy. And they lost their left guard to injury in the preseason. And he stepped up and said, "Coach, I'll play left guard." And he did. He spent the entire grade 11 year playing left guard, which speaks to, him as a leader. Like, what grade 11 kid says, "No, I don't want to be the star running back this year because the team needs me. I want to be the left guard." There are not a lot of kids that are going to say that, and good for him. And, he was someone that realized it was best for the team if he took that on. And so he did it. And that's someone I'd like to have on my team. And then in grade 12, he went back to being running back and was amazing.
Yeah, I think it's a nice pick. I mean, again, when you're in the 5th round here, I think anybody who bangs the table at this point, I think is kidding themselves. I wouldn't say, when you're looking at 5 and 6, I would say it's very hard to say for sure this guy's going to be good and this guy's not.
With 5 through 8, if you're drafting someone that's still on the team in a couple of years, you've done well. And
right.
And I love him for a 5th round pick. I think that's awesome. Yep. I gave it an A+. I can't think of anyone. Well, there's no one else that I thought would have been a better pick there. And I think he's everything that you want out of a 5th round pick.
Well, I'm not just going to give an A+ like some sort of drunken sailor.
You can't just do it because you don't feel like it. Like, there's got to be a reason you don't do it.
I think you'll find that I can do it.
Well, I guess you can say whatever you want, but
I would give it a B+.
B+. Yeah.
I don't believe that necessarily A+ picks are available in the 5th round.
No, okay. It's not like I'm saying I think he's a better player than Dejon Brissett, because I gave Dejon Brissett an A and I gave Pellerin an A+. I'm not saying that he's a better player. I'm saying that for the value of where it was, for picking up Brissett as the 2nd overall pick is an A. Picking up Pellerin in the 5th round is an A+. Like, if we were grading it like that, then yeah, obviously, like he's not the kind of athlete that Brissett is. But I'm grading the Argos, not the player. I'm grading them picking Pellerin in the 5th round is an A+.
Well, that's not my criterion.
All right. I think maybe we should have discussed that beforehand, but that's cool.
Well, nobody needs unison.
No, that's fine. We'll continue with your guerrilla grades, and I'll continue with my soundly thought through grades. So we moved to the 6th round and the last pick the Argos have in the draft. This one was a bit of a surprise for me. They took Sam Baker out of Saskatchewan. I had no clue they were going to take, even thinking about Sam Baker. I had seen Sam Baker on film, but not because I was watching him. It only came up because I was watching film on Shaden Phillip from Alberta, and he was in that game scoring touchdowns, and it just kind of is something that I noted, but I didn't even know he was draft eligible. That hadn't even crossed my mind. And so when they drafted him, I'm like, Sam Baker, and I didn't have him on my list. I hadn't even considered him. As I said, I didn't even know he was in the draft. So that was a bit of a surprise. But I've gone back since and watched a little bit of film specifically on him. And yeah, he's better than I thought he would be. He, I think, is a nice pick for a 6th rounder. Very tall, somewhat fast. and a guy that they turned to a lot on third down, and a guy that was sort of hindered by injury. He lost a lot of time over his years at Saskatchewan to injury, which I think maybe kept him off a lot of people's radar, including my own. But he ended his career on a high. He was able to stay healthy in his last year, ended up scoring 5 touchdowns in 4 games, and looked really good throughout most of last season. It's just that he doesn't have much of a track record because of all those injuries. But I think why not take a shot? And they were saying, I think it was Pinball that was saying that he can actually long snap as well, which is something to note. That's always good. Anytime, I always say that to all of my players, especially linemen, learn to long snap, because that's a skill that most people can't do, and it's extremely necessary. I've had wide receivers as long snappers just because they happen to be the best guy. Ideally, it's a linebacker or a lineman, but it's a skill that is absolutely necessary. And if it's your 6'3" wide receiver that's going to be your long snapper, well, so be it. It's just an extra thing that can separate one pick from another. So that's kind of interesting.
Yeah, he has the size to, and I'm sure at Saskatchewan to be an effective special teamer.
Yep.
And so if really this pick could be a special teams pick.
I think that's what it is more than anything else.
Right. I don't think they're worried about him being a game-breaking receiver.
No.
And as much as he's a well-built athlete, and so I think the more well-built athletes who can, if you're a number 5, 6 receiver, can be whether he long snaps or can simply be a productive special teamer, I think that's useful. I talked pre-draft. I like the McGill defensive lineman.
So you're talking about Sinet Spalding?
Yeah, I think that he, they may feel more confident with their defensive line room and their defensive line depth chart, and that they plugged in another special teamer ahead of him. But that would be my only sort of minor disappointment. I thought that he had dropped, and I thought that he was an undervalued pick.
I felt like Andrew Becker would have been. That's probably where I would have gone. To earn an A from me, I think I would have probably taken Andrew Becker there from Regina. But again, that was me still thinking we needed a center, and apparently we don't. So
well, and I've seen some clips of Baker, and he pops as a really sort of likable, high energy.
Yeah, he's a big target, and yeah, he's a big target that runs well, good hands. It seems like, again, a character guy that his teammates love, and another guy that you want to have in the room. So
yeah, it seems like a glue pick. I mean, I would give it a B- because I wanted Sinet Spalding. That's my own personal bias, and okay, I mean, another receiver. I don't know if we needed another receiver. If he's going to be a long snapper, that's a different conversation. I'm okay with drafting a long snapper. I think teams should draft specialists. So if that's why he's drafted, then I changed the pick. I reserve the right to change this grade.
Yeah, I guess my thought was, if you're going to draft someone specifically as a long snapper, I was thinking Dylan Cormier from Mount Allison, and I don't think he ended up getting drafted. Actually, I don't think any Mounties got drafted. So he would still be there, and so that's someone that if they wanted to and they were really desperate for a long snapper, they can probably give him a call and sign him to a contract. I'm giving it a B+, and I think I'll probably keep it there unless he ends up being the starting long snapper, in which case, yeah, I'll retroactively change it to an A. And that's the draft. That was it. So, a few guys left over that we didn't take, but overall, I thought this was really good. It was about as good as I think it's about as well as a draft can go. It wasn't exactly what I was thinking, but it never is. When have you ever seen a draft where those are exactly the the players that I thought they would take. It's never like that. And the fact that they actually took 3 of the players that we had mocked to them last week, and the guys that they took, the other guys that they took, we've come around on. I think that's a pretty positive thing.
Yeah, I think the context of the draft really helps. I think that in a vacuum, you might not like a pick, but when you see it on a board and other things they've done, then a pick suddenly makes more sense than it would otherwise. It struck me, I think, really happily. It struck me as a well-designed draft. It was not scattershot. I think they had a plan. I think that they knew exactly what they wanted. I think that they stuck to it. I think when you look at the picks, they seem like, because sometimes you can look at a draft class and it looks, like somebody threw a dart. I think you look at the picks, it looks like a draft class. It looks like these choices were made in unison with each other, that they were made as a whole, as opposed to just picking best player available.
I think, I think you're right, and I think you got to tip your hat to Pinball and John Murphy, Vince Magri, Coach Dinwiddie. They were ecstatic after the draft.
I mean, they went. You saw the the round table.
Yeah, it looked like they were ready to just like go streaking down the street. They were so excited. So
yeah, they were really happy with how it went.
You don't typically see, and it looked genuine to me. I don't feel like it was like, hey, no matter what happens, we're going to say it was terrific. Because I think teams do say that.
I think they got the first 5 guys they wanted.
I think they did. I think they definitely weren't expecting to get a couple of the guys they got early on, and they were thrilled also to get Pellerin. I think they were thrilled to get Baker at the end. I think all 7 guys they took were guys that were high on their board, and I have to agree that I think they have the best draft class. Looking through who everyone else drafted, I think I'd grade the Argos higher than everybody else. I don't think there's a team that outdrafted us. It's something that you can't really tell until a few years down the road. Like, during some of the coverage, they put up the graphics of, well, here are the players that Toronto drafted in this year, and some of them are just like, who are these guys? Where just like nobody stuck at all.
Well, I think it is a draft where teams that weren't that maybe weren't as organized or weren't as focused on what they wanted. I do think it's a draft where there will be teams that that wash it out because it's such an unusual situation. You have way less data than you normally do, and I think they're not every franchise can do that properly. So yeah, I do think for sure there are teams that this sort of new world affected.
I thought Edmonton's draft was weird. That was one that stood out to me as, and I think it's like what you're saying before, though, like they can afford to have a bit of a weird draft. Like Winnipeg, their draft's a bit weird too, just because they didn't really have that many picks. I don't think they picked until 18, I think. And so their draft looks a little lacking compared to others because we'd already made 3 picks and we're just about to make a 4th by the time Winnipeg made their first pick. So it certainly that helps. But I thought we had the best draft class of everybody, and it's just another reason to be happy and optimistic as an Argos fan, which is nice after the last couple of seasons. It's nice to feel good about this team, and I really do right now. I don't feel like this team really has holes at the moment. It's got a lot of areas that are unproven, but there are not really areas where I say we definitely need to bring a guy in here. So overall draft grade, what do you have?
I'm so loath to...
I'm not even listening to your picks anymore anyway, but I feel like we have to do it now just because...
Well, I feel like I've been the subject of a lot of slander today. You were questioning my use of my personal free time during the day, and now
some of us are quite busy.
questioning my effectiveness of my draft analysis. Yeah, I mean, I'm an Irish fatalist at heart. But I would have to give the draft an A.
Yeah, and I would match your A. I think this is an A draft. It, as I said, I don't think in looking back at it, there's very little I would have done differently, and I'm giving them the benefit of the doubt on the few things that I'm a little bit unsure on. I think this has to be an A.
Yeah, I exactly. I think now look, if some stuff doesn't pan out, and then there's more context to questioning decisions.
It won't all pan out. Like, it never does. There's
No,
no
of
team
course.
that where all of their draft picks are like, yeah, those guys were all great. Some of these guys aren't going to pan out, but they're things that likely we couldn't have foreseen.
It would have been more fun to rage about a few of the picks for me personally.
Well, not for very long though. Like, it's fun for the podcast, but then after that, we got to sit there and then watch those guys.
No, I agree. It's not.
So I'm much more excited to watch these guys.
It's not a sustainable model for fun.
No, it is. Those podcasts have a certain entertainment value to them. But,
I know. I'm just being honest, and that's part of me was looking like maybe that would happen, and they didn't. They took all the ammo away from me. I thought they did a really, really good job.
All right, well, that'll just about do it for us today. Please don't forget to subscribe and rate and tell every Argo fan you know that they've got to listen to the X's and Argos podcast. For JB, I'm Ben Grant saying so long, and may all your pre-snap reads be good ones.
Go, Toronto Argos, go, go, go. Pull together, fight the